Here we are in the new scene, and probably some of you remember this guy from the volume 1. And I suggest to everyone who is watching and haven't watched volume 1, I kindly suggest you get it. It's really good and it's really packed with lots of information to get you up to speed with Cine 4D and modeling in particular. I will just press NB in my viewport so you can actually see the wireframe of those objects. The only thing I have is a camera, which is set as a render view. And I have two lights, and this scene is pre-calibrated, so I pre-calibrated to maximum 242 value and I lowered that intensity a bit down because I want this image, I want this render to be a little bit more, let's say, soft with pastel-like colors. So I did just that, I loaded those colors, so this is the side light, it's less in intensity than this main light. And you can see the color here. It's kind of a soft orangey pinky color. And here under main I have a green color that is really tuned down to a really 5% value of that color. Okay, that's the general approach I use. I select a color of the light, then I tune it down anywhere between 1 and 10%. And that pretty much always gives me decent results, so I stick to that workflow. And that's it. We also have the stage. I can simply turn off this camera so you can see it's nothing fancy. It's simply some sort of enclosed geometry, and we can start building this scene. Once again, prior to every scene, you will most certainly be in the testing mode, so help yourself relieve the clutter in the scene. So for example, you can turn off the lights in the viewport so you get a much cleaner view. Also, what I almost always prefer to do, I put this shadow guy, I just drag it here in the viewport so it's simply accessible at the all time, so I don't have to work my way through all those menus. Another thing that I sometimes do is really to drop this anti-aliasing guy here. We can actually do that. So I can set that really quickly without going there. And I think we are ready for our first shader. In the prior lesson, I really showed you how to build something with procedural shaders. And this scene I want to show you the power of textures. And you can actually see that let me just set this to always, so it shows always, and also for my shadow. So it shows it always. Just a small glitch, so we can continue. Before I create shaders or build my scenes, I really sketch roughly what I want on a piece of paper. So in this case, I wanted some sort of a really realistic black and white marble material that is really nice and somewhat reflective. So you can actually have a realistic render. If I do a preview render now, let me just see where I'm at, and this exactly is what I want. So I want soft colors, soft transitions, and kind of this pinkish specular here, and I'm really satisfied with this. And I even won't change this stage material. It can be this default 242 value, so it will completely get the colors and the color values of the lights without disturbing them with their own color. So let's disable that preview render and create a new material here. We will name it Dragon. And let's start with our color channel, and I will load a texture here. You can find textures on the internet, or you can even buy them. So we'll load an image. So I found an image of concrete somewhere on the internet. And if I do a preview render now, let me show you what happens. I naturally have to apply that material. So let me see where I'm at. And there you go. You can now really feel how textures are powerful. Even with the slightest change, you get a really nice representation. And this is a really good start. And if some of you remember, I told you that textures and displacements are absolutely the best way to get realism. Nothing beats it. So instead of building displacement here, I will build it here in the color channel so I can actually see the things happening in the viewport. Okay, so let me do just that. I will reload this texture, but for now on I will simply clear and deal with displacement first. So let's drop in a noise here. And after some experimentation, I found that this cranial noise really gives me what I want. And let's just activate our preview render and play with it. So I want this detail attenuation to be at 0, so I get maximum details all over. You won't be actually able to see that now, but you will see it later in the displacement channel. One word of caution though, don't use this 0 value in animations. You will get flicker and artifacts. It is just for still images. What I also want to do, I want to cut off some of these values, so I have something like this. Let's try. Maybe even more. Let's try something about around 80. Could really work. Yeah, this could work. Let's now try and copy this to displacement channel. Activate it. Right click here and we can clear it out here so it doesn't get in the way. And you see what happened. We don't have enough subdivision, so we have to displace it on a sub polygon level. So let's try with 4, and we will round the geometry so it's not jagged. And this is really too much. Let's try 1. So I'm really searching for the right numbers. I think like this could play. Let's try 5 here. It's somewhat different. Let's play a bit with the values inside that displacement. So first I will increase these octaves to a maximum number. That basically means maximum detail. Okay, so let's see what do we get after it renders. Fortunately, there is no way you can speed up those calculations. Displacement is sometimes heavy. Actually, I can see a problem now, and I really know what is the problem. And many of people think this UVW mapping will not work with this fit to object command that is fixed in size when it is not. Okay? So if I do a right click and fit to object command, watch what happens. And you can see completely the difference now. So don't think that UVW mapping projection is without a size. It actually has a size. And this could work. Let's open that material once again, and it kind of looks flat, and that is why I will add ambient occlusion in the diffusion channel. So it will diffuse and create some sort of a shadowing, and it will give us the illusion of depth. So let's just do that and see what we get. Okay, so let's load the ambient occlusion here. You can leave it on default settings. Let's give it a second. I will just restart it so you can actually see the difference. I'll give it a second once it renders it. Here we go, and you can actually see now there is some self-shadowing going on here and down here and here in the neck and even in the mouth, and especially here in this eye area. So it gives you the illusion of depth. So let me disable that, and I will load that image once again in the color channel. So let's load it. You can find it here. You can see I'm really organized, and I will change the sampling mode to this SAT mode. It's kind of the most precise mode. If you have images that are really with such detail and small features, I suggest you stick to this SAT sampling. If you turn it off, you will get into troubles because it will be really grainy and it won't look really good. So let's do a test render now and see where we are at. I'll briefly pause the video until it finishes. It looks pretty decent, but there is actually one thing I want to change, and you can find it here under this image controls, and this is this black and white point. Let me disable the render just for now and drop this to a flat projection. You will actually see what happens. Maybe even open a new window that is much bigger so you can actually see the change. With this you can control the black and white points in the image. For example, if I enter here 0.5, you'll see I will get much more contrast, and that is exactly what I want in this case, because currently that texture in the default mode without this manipulation looks really kind of washed out, and I don't want that. I want really nice and sharp transitions from black, gray and white. So it's much more vivid and clear. That is my original intention, and let's do a render now. This time we will give it a second or two just to render, so you can actually see how much time it takes for the render. And I have a really decent machine. First it calculates the displacement, then it calculates the complete surface with ambient occlusion, and this is all without AA and shadows, and you can imagine that render times can go really up, and once we add global illumination it will probably be somewhere around an hour or two once it finishes it. And this is exactly what I wanted. This really looks like some sort of a stone, some sort of a marble, and I want to build a polished, nice, detailed marble. And this is actually all that I need. Many people make a mistake trying to nail the material, and they go overboard. They simply go too far, and you cannot push the material to some sort of extent where it won't go. It simply won't go. Now this is the maximum for this material. Now it all depends about lighting, and in this case we will use a really nice feature in Cinema 4D, which is called global illumination, of course, but a special mode here which is called the sky sampler, and I will show you how to utilize to get really nice results and nice reflections. Let me just create a clear coat for this guy, and I will be right back. So here we are back. I just created this clear coat and copied the dragon and simply applied this compositing tag, and I turned off the shadows options and the ambient occlusion, so this ambient occlusion doesn't see that clear coat. So let's try a quick test render just to see how this clear coat looks. Just give it a second or two to render. And this is coming along quite nicely. I can see it already here. Now what I want to do, I want to create a illumination, global illumination. I don't want to use this sky sampler is the best option now, because these irradiance, cache and QMC are really an overkill for this scene, and this sky sampler is really good because it samples the image that you apply in a luminance channel on a sky object and produces really nice reflections and overall a lightness. So let me do just that. Let's create a new material. We will call it sky, and we will turn everything off. We'll turn just a luminance channel, and we can load the same HDRI we used before. And for this to work, you have to have a sky object, which we will use, or a realistic sky. And if you use realistic sky, you will have many options to create custom skies, and in that case you don't need this guy. And I really want this option now, and I will apply that sky object in the scene and give it this HDRI luminance material. I hope I haven't lost anyone with this. It's really simple. So material with luminance channel enabled with HDRI map inside and slapped on the sky object. Simple as that. What is also important here in the render settings, this sky sampler has the samples option. The default 64 is simply too low. First go with at least, let's say 1000 samples would be really a good starting point. And in this case, I kind of really know from experience that around 2000 samples will be just enough. So we will now actually give it a shot and do a small preview render of the part. And this turned out really nice. You can see how that sky sampler mode, how it really sampled that HDR image nice, and you can see it here in the reflections happening, and it gives that nice overall soft equal illumination. And this is all without shadows and without anti-aliasing for now. So let's prepare this for render. The first thing I want to do, I want to determine what type of anti-aliasing I want to use. So let's go here and determine that. I think this best option with the still image filter, and if you remember correctly, there are no artifacts with even without anti-aliasing, so we can really leave these default values. For this stage object, I want to force a lower anti-aliasing, so let's apply a compositing tag. And we will force something like 1 by 1, and maximum will be 2 by 2, just to be sure. So what I really want to do, I want to cut down the render time. Here I will enable shadows, and in this case I want to have really precise shadows. So I will play with these settings a bit, so something around 60% of accuracy, and let's say even 500 samples for maximum values. And I also want to enable multipass, but I will choose with which layers I want to maybe later play with inside picture viewer or even in 2D image editor. So let's first right click and add all image layers. We will simply delete what we don't need. So let's delete the ambient, we don't have that. Specular is not here. This post effects, both atmosphere can go. We don't have any caustic, so we'll get rid of that also. And we can leave this, guys. Diffuse, shadow, reflection, refraction, ambient occlusion, and global illumination. We have all that in the scene. Another thing we could do here under options, since we don't have many reflective and especially transparent objects in the scene, we can lower this ray depth and shadow depth somewhere around 10 by 10. I should have probably do that before final render, but somewhere from my experience I can tell that this 10 by 10 really work. Even 5 by 5 would work, but I really want to be sure because I want this to be really nice render. We can leave it as it is now, and let's see how big that image will be. 1000 by 750, that is quite alright, and I believe we are ready to go. Here we have our guy rendered, and it doesn't need heavy post-production. So it took just a few clicks in the image editor to get this to look really nice. So you can see the post-production version. I just cropped that image a bit so you can see it's much more sharp, and it looks really decent, and I'm really satisfied with this render. So let's try something a little bit more complex now, and it will involve a deeper delve into GI system. Okay, so let's render our next scene.